If you don't have your Gene Keys profile already, you may want that out. So, all right, y'all. We may have some people show up in the middle, but I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to our My Connection speaker series. So we're really excited to start this series so that we can all get to know each other better in this community, and also so that we can reveal our purpose to one another and see if that is in alignment with other people in the community. So the main intention today is for you all to see an example of what it's like to contemplate your gene keys, because we often get asked this question of practicality. I know all of this stuff about me, but tell me how to use it practically. And so this is a practical example of how to use the gene keys. And then at the end, we might have time to talk about the gene keys that the Venus retrograde is occurring. And that way you can see the dates for that as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce you all to a dear friend of mine, Dr. Holly McFarland. Welcome, Holly.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's I just want to say it's just such a joy to see you like living this gift. And I know you have your like gardens that you're tending to and getting your hands in the soil, but you're also doing that in this community, in this sphere, like this spiritual garden that you're planting. And it's just been such a joy and honor to like watch you blossom and grow. And feels amazing to like be a participant in your art that you are so fully bringing out. So I just want to say how much I appreciate you and love you.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
I definitely, we are building a beautiful virtual garden here. So that's what's the most exciting thing about this project. And that's kind of where the name comes from, is ensouling this virtual space again with the internet. So putting the human soul, the human spirit back into this place. So yes, thank you for that. So to get us started then, Holly, I want to talk briefly about a little about you, a little about your experiences, and where you're located, so that we can just get some kind of idea of that information about you.
Sure. Yeah. So start off, I'm located in a little town called Plano, Texas, which is central Texas. It's about an hour and a half from Austin. And I'm on ancestral land. So this land has been in my family since the 1800s. And I've had, like my ancestors' flesh and blood and bones are actually in this space. So there's something that is so connected that I feel such a deep relationality and intimacy with where I live. And it's been an incredible part of my journey and my growth as a human being. And then like on a more practical level, I'm a psychologist. I mean, I got my doctorate. I still, that label doesn't always fit well. It's accurate, but it doesn't fit me super well. Just because the training sometimes felt more reductionistic than the way that I actually see and walk through the world. And I would say that the things that taught me the most were actually more of the actual touching of the world, that more phenomenological, like really meeting the world. And those experiences included, one kind of pivotal moments of my life have been living in Mongolia for a little bit and connecting with the kind of indigenous ways of those people. I was also born in Australia, so there's also this like kind of deep connection to kind of Aboriginal, kind of that indigeneity. And then I spent about 4 years while I was doing my doctorate living at a Zen temple, which was a really wonderful, very Saturnian, very disciplined way of getting to kind of tame and create the right kind of barriers, the right kind of structure for my thinking to not get so captured by my thinking and my thoughts. get to know that part of me really well. And then another pretty transformative experience was walking the Pacific Crest Trail, which I walked from Canada down to Mexico over the course of 4 months in solitude and in prayer. And so getting to know nature, I mean, both the Zen practice and the hiking were such a raw confrontation with myself, getting really naked and with who I am and where the rubber really meets the road, and there's nowhere to hide, there's no distractions. So a kind of these deep dives into not separating from pain and heartache and joy and love and all the messiness and beauty of life. So yeah, those are aspects of my training that feel important.
Nice. Yes. And then, so because you keep using the word reductionist, I'm going to reduce, just for everybody in this audience, the profile and type that you have for your human design. Holly is a 6-2 pure generator. And so as you're listening to Holly speak, you might pick up on certain things about a 6-2 pure generator if you're from the human design lingo. Okay. And so this word reductionist is really interesting because, yes, science, that's what it does, is reduces it to what we can logically understand. However, this world is full of mysteries, as we know. And so what the gene keys do is the opposite. They expand all the patterns. They allow you to see how patterns, just continue to fractal out. So we'll talk more about Venus retrograde at the end of the conversation, but for the purpose of setting up this talk about Venus, I want to talk about what you've been doing this Venus retrograde cycle.
Yeah. Thank you for that invitation. So starting August 4th, I kind of took a 12-day sabbatical into going into the Venus sequence and the gene keys, and it was just kind of amazing how it emerged. Sarah and I kind of do ritual together with a group of women. And we had been celebrating Lammas, right? Like the midpoint of summer. And the ritual that was designed for that really kind of, for me, what it evoked was honoring where we've come from and contemplating kind of, how did we get here? What are these 10-year spans of our lives, and using music to kind of evoke those memories. And then to give a lot of gratitude. So that ritual included also writing down sort of things I was really grateful for my younger self. And so that sparked something. There was something, it really pierced my heart. There was kind of a longing for more exploration around that. And then I was in the midst of listening to this podcast with Martin Shaw, and he started talking about this myth of the lindworm. And basically the kind of final tagline of it was, each of us has a man who has shed his scales, and each of us has a woman with an educated heart. And that myth just, it jumped into me. I mean, it really, it actually brought me to my knees. I was like, this is, feels like I'm so seen, and this is kind of the life I'm living right now. So there was something really potent about that needed more investigation. And I know when a myth really speaks to us that it's not just getting heady about the story, but it's an instruction. It's an instruction. And in the myth, the woman is embroidering and stitching nightgowns around her heart. That's how she's educating her heart, is through embroidery. And so there was something there of like, this is an instruction of how to educate your heart. So like, how do you put this into the world, right? How do you actually put this into the world rather than just holding it in? So there was something there. And then I knew I wanted to kind of check out the Venus sequence, and had been very flippant about it, sort of looked through the book, flipped here and there, but I hadn't really given a dedicated, intentional time to it. And then Venus was in retrograde. So what was so interesting was that this ritual around Venus, the Venus sequence, was and that like kind of a composite of all these beautiful different pieces of art that were showing up in my life, and each one of them asking to kind of coalesce and create a new piece of art, right? So all these, it was like allowing that beauty to really speak through, and then giving it a form. So I took the different pieces from kind of the Lamas, the myth, and then this Venus retrograde, and it really created itself. I was just sort of listening, and so yeah, I decided, because in the myth it's like, 366 days. She makes a year and a day commitment, and it was like, I believe 12 gowns that she sewed into, and I was like, okay, 12 days. I'll do 12 days, and the Venus sequence is 6 spheres, so I'll just spend 2 days. And it was quick. It was like, I knew that was not enough time to really contemplate it, but at least to get a large generalized view. So I spent 2 days with each sphere. And then I also, I brought things out into the world. Because it was going through kind of, childhood and whatnot, I got into finger paints and things that I liked to do as a kid. I brought those into the ritual. I created a lot of rock stacks. That was part of it too, as a sort of love letter to my past self, who like showing her that there's a way, I was creating these rock stacks because that was important for me on the Pacific Crest Trail. Was, you're feeling lost, and then you would see a stack of rocks, and it would validate you're on the right path. So I wanted to create a bunch of rock stacks for my past self, for her, because I sense, she struggled a lot. She struggled so much as a kid and felt really lost. And I feel like my present self, I'm her future ancestor. And I think it's me actually now that was helping her hold on. And so I wanted to send that to her. And then I took the cherry pits from our Lamas ritual, and I buried them as a sort of like, these are the seeds of love. These are the seeds of love that I want to grow, and I want them to regenerate into this world. So pruning away the kind of shadows, or the pruning away the things that I don't need to hold on to anymore, and then sending blessings into the ground for the things I want to regenerate for the next cycle. And then at the end of the night, I would close things off. I also brought in Richard Rudd's 7 sacred seals. So I would then say each seal for the line of the sphere. If I was like a line 2, I would then I would say aloud the prayer of the second seal out into the stars, because it evokes the stars too. So I would do that at night and pray to Vega or whatever, send those words out to Vega or whoever the star was in that one. So that's more or less kind of, so it was 12 days of reading and then contemplating, and I have to say, like, I'm a really, really, really slow reader, but it's because part of something I realized in this journey is that the mind isn't going to figure it out. So it's like I have to take the words in, and I can only take in so much at a time, because then I have to walk with it. I have to go walk the words into the world and press them up against reality and see how it responds, So I try not to like overly think about stuff, but just let the words, it's like, metabolize and sit in my body, and then bring them out into the world, and then open my eyes to the world and see if there's resonance, see if there's alignment there with what the words are saying and what I'm experiencing out in the world. And for me, that's really what contemplation is. It's walking with stuff. It's staying with the trouble, walking with the concepts or ideas. And there's a natural timing to understanding. And I did that a lot on the trail as well. I would memorize a line of poetry each day and just walk with that line until I became the line, until I became the words themselves. And I think that's an important aspect of contemplation. It's not just about consuming a bunch of words and getting really heady about it, but it's letting the words shape you and letting the world shape you, which doesn't require a whole lot of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of the things that Richard Rudd mentions in the beginning of the Gene Keys book, is that this isn't learning, this is knowing. You already know, and you're revealing, you're peeling back the layers that are covering up this information that is in your DNA. It's encoded. So yeah, that's amazing. I want to share with everybody the Venus sequence. So if you're not familiar with your Gene Keys, there's 3 different sequences in this. So there's an activation sequence, the Venus sequence, and then the Pearl sequence. So let me just share with you. Got it on the wrong one. There we go. So here we have the Venus sequence, which we're also calling the pathway of love. And it begins with that last sphere of your activation sequence, which is your purpose sphere. And then the attraction sphere, the IQ, the EQ, the SQ, and the core. And so I want to briefly summarize these spheres as we go through them. So we're going to just take it one sphere at a time. I will be taking this screen down, so if you need a screenshot, now's probably a good time. But yeah, we're just going to go through this pathway, and anything that's coming up, Holly, that you experienced while contemplating the sphere, or if it's about your particular Gene Key, feel free to include that. But basically what we want to do is see if there's anything that we can recontextualize from your psychology training, and any experiences. So not just your psychology training, the Zen monastery experience, the Pacific Trail experience, all of those life experiences too, and how they might inform that sphere. So starting with the purpose sphere, this sphere is your hidden, it lies hidden deep within your DNA. And so this is about trusting, and your purpose is laid out for you already, and all you have to do is unlock it. So this is that idea of revealing something. So when contemplating this purpose sphere, did you employ any practices, any rituals, or anything specific, or what was your experience like with that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just, I kept the ritual pretty consistent. So I didn't necessarily change based on the sphere. I would just read, I would read the Venus sequence book, and then I would read the Gene Key with it. And then the next day I would then just read the Gene Key again. And then again, walking with it and looking at where in my life, right, like this pattern shows up. And the purpose one was really interesting because that connection is Dharma. So it's sort of like what I was gleaning from that was this is what you can come back to. Like when you're lost and confused, this is like the lesson, like come back. And so for mine, it's simplicity. So especially when I talk or write, I can be totally overly wordy. And that was one of the shadows, like fragmented speaking. And that was really helpful because as I was working through the other spheres, it was like, oh, I can come back to this purpose, which is what's the simplest path? What's the quintessence? What's the essence of actually what I'm feeling or what I need to say or this experience? So it was great because this was sort of this foundation. You just come back to the simplicity, and then that's an important way to work with these other complex issues, you know?
Oh, that's amazing because of your analogy with the rocks and just continuing to return back to that column of rocks. So it's almost like you were, giving your mind something to work with on that. There's this idea of also like when you're, trying to break a habit or something, you put a coin into a jar every day, that you're able to accomplish that because seeing it really helps your mind to process it. So yeah, you basically like created your own lighthouse with those rocks and was like, this is the purpose.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. And it's really interesting.
Because the other thing too, it's sort of like, well, where do the words come from? Where does the thinking come from? Well, it comes from silence. Words come from silence. So if I can return to the simplicity of silence, that's then where the revelation will occur. So.
Oh, there's so much in it, but I'm going to move us to the attraction sphere because we got to get through the 6 of them. But okay, so then the attraction sphere. So this is magnetic power. This is like what we're attracting in. he does say, if you give way to the shadow, then it will manifest as an ongoing external conflict that you will meet in your relationship. Once you have transformed the shadow of this gene key, you will begin to discover its gifts, and your relationships will open up to new vistas and possibilities. So we really want to understand the attraction sphere. And I don't know if anything separate, if you want to talk about the particular gene key that you have here too, and just any reflections on that one.
Yeah, this one was probably the most confusing for me, or the hardest one to grapple with. And for mine, it's 16, which is mastery, versatility, and indifference. And I would say, yeah, this one was probably one of the more painful ones, because it was a reflection on my intimate relationships, and you know, these wounds of not feeling loved, and where just things went awry. You know, it was more of a reflection on sort of heartbreak. And but then it was really interesting, but it was like inner and outer, right? Like, also, it's not just what you're attracting in, but it's within yourself as well. And the mastery one was, the versatility mastery was cool, because what I sort of started to see was master my life's work. Like, it's like, what am I really, what's my gift here? And my gift, and what I feel passionate about, is learning to master listening, like the art of listening. And so it was like coming back to that, where it's like, if I can master this listening really well, that will unlock a lot of things. And that recognition too, that how valuable it is to learn something, like to the specificity of love, like when you choose something and then to study it and be a student of it, and to like, and then this is what actually really love is. It's like being with someone and like, you know, who are you and how do you see the world and what's your perspective? And I did that with Zen, for example, you know, where I took a deep dive and really made a vow to that particular tradition, and then it stopped serving me. But when I left it, then I was able to pick up so many different. There was that versatility, because I could take, because I understood Zen kind of in a more intimate way, these other paths or traditions became a lot easier to understand. So that there was a really interesting lesson there. And my relationship with the land has been that too, where it's like, this place has called me, and we've chosen each other. And as I study her and understand her and court her, it's revealing so much inside of me, and it's showing me the beauty of unconditional love. And now it's like, can I not bring that now out and apply it into other relationships and other places in my life?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot's coming up about, you know, that relationship with your environment, and how we're participating with everything that is around us. It is not, I might be saying something crazy here, but the world's not dead around us. You know, this is a living organism that we're interacting with. So that's very, you know, we really want to be mindful, since this is an organism that we're interacting with, of what we're attracting in, that magnetic pull. So yeah, recognizing that what you said was, well, I noticed heartbreak at first. So then I changed that to unconditional love, because I noticed within me the heartbreak. And so now if I notice within me the unconditional love, and it's just a frame shift, it's just focusing your attention somewhere else. So,
and it's amazing, because it's just a gaze away, or it's just a breath away. It's not like you don't have to spend years to get there. I mean, it's literally, it's like you said, it's in us, it's locked in us. And again, this was very revelatory for me, because that shadow of indifference, and that being a really deep wound that I've carried, where I have felt in my relationships, you know, from parents to lovers and stuff, of like feeling like the other doesn't care about me, or is indifferent to my existence. And that kind of delusion, in some ways, working with that's really hard, noticing how I project that out, and then how that has shaped a lot of my reactivity, a lot of the hurt I've put out into the world, because I have felt so brushed off, I think, and not seen. But then it's like, well, that's not true. Like, like there's a shift there, or recognizing why that kind of came up, and the forgiveness is a huge piece of all of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
now moving into the IQ, that's the next sphere after the attraction sphere. So this IQ, we're working backwards, which is so interesting because Venus retrograde right now. And so as you go through the Venus sequence, you're going in reverse order through your life. So this is corresponding, this IQ sphere, to the ages from 14 to 21. And what Richard Rudd says in this book is that this is about mental development and kind of how our mental mind shields and protects us. But yeah, to this point where sometimes it can shadow or mask our true desires because it's a protective field, but it's, kind of maybe going too far, maybe a little too strict on our emotions or whatever it might arise as. So any reflections that you have on the IQ sphere?
Yeah. And it's interesting because each of these spheres, right? So the purpose to the attraction is your dharma. Then the attraction to your IQ is your karma. This is like your karmic ancestral sort of stuff. And it's like working through your karma gets you back to your dharma. It's like Dr. Seuss poem or something. But that one's, looking at like teenage years and God, how fucking messy that time in life is. And and again, so much of this, because of that Lamaze ritual of giving gratitude to my past self, there was a lot of like, it's like looking at that shadow, but like not getting pulled down by it too much, by sending so much gratitude and understanding. For me, the shadows in that one, it's sanctity, inspiration, and psychosis. And I have huge emotions. I have huge emotions that I often get really overwhelmed by. And part of that shadow, I believe, was sort of like fanaticism, and fanatical thinking was the reactive, and repression was disenchantment. And there was a real interesting contemplation there about giving power over to people. Like I did this a lot with my upbringing, my religious upbringing, where it was like, God, and I'm nowhere equal, and I'm, this bullshit of original sin and all of that. And right, just getting all fanatical, like, well, if I can get God's love, I'll be okay. Because I'm inherently like a bad person. And so untangling, those messages, again, not easy, because they're really deep in there. I mean, they're like ravines in our bodies that have been just carved over time. And so it's just holding it really gently, being actually being water, which is just so it smooths the edges out. It takes time and patience. It's not brute force, but it's just letting that water penetrate the stone and smooth it out. And so for me, that IQ one was, going into those teenage wounds, and just, again, having so much compassion for this girl who like had very, very little guidance, very, very little support, in sort of, it's like not having, like, a lot of people having that one person that really like believes in you, instead of, I didn't really have much of that. So, but I can be that now, which is amazing, right? Like this is something interesting. I mean, to bring in psychology, working with people, there's sometimes people have secret wishes of wanting a time machine. You can go back in time and change it. And we can actually, it's like, if you can, when you recall that memory, you're different. Every time you recall it, you're at a different position. You're in a different place. And so you're bringing actually a new perspective to that memory. And there's so much that can be done. There's so much healing that can be done by, like, we can actually go back and parent ourselves and comfort ourselves, and thereby change the memory. We can change the past. It's actually quite radical. So yeah, that's something I think is pretty miraculous about being human.
Yeah, yeah. I like that you brought that up because I think I've said before in a conversation that this consciousness is like a time traveling machine.
Yeah.
And we're just coming online to realizing that we have the ability to transport ourselves into the future, see what that looks like, make it happen from here, or we have the ability to go back into the past and make it different from here.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Love that.
And again, that's what those rock stacks were really about. Because like I said, that, especially my teenage self, like she was struggling so hard to hold on. And I sense what helped me hold on is actually me now. You know, it's like telling her, you know, it's okay, hang on. You're like, it's gonna, there's redemption, I promise, you know? And I sense she's hearing that, like she's hearing that. And that's what's helping her hold on and keep putting one foot in front of the other. And there's just so much gratitude for how much she had to like carry and to just really stick with it. I just feel thankful that, you know, she was able to hold on.
Yes. And so now we're going to get deeper into her because now we're going into the emotional, the EQ. So this sphere, this is going to correlate with ages 7 to 14. And he says in this book, the shadow of this gene key governs your primary emotional defense mechanism, which is the set pattern you adopted as a child whenever you felt unsafe. Yeah. So this is kind of that reason why the IQ develops, is like the protection, because there was this feeling of unsafety. So any reflections that you have on the EQ and this emotional intelligence?
Yeah, that was cool because they work together, the IQ and the EQ, right? Like he kind of names them as like, you know, essentially it's like body mind, or so they actually, you know, when your body feels unsafe, then that turns on this thinking, right? This mental pattern. And so they're like the duality, they're like the polarity, right? And so working those two, just like kind of working together with them. And for me, this one was in clarity, intuition, and shadow. I should know the shadow. Clarity, intuition, and unease. Yeah.
That shadow of unease. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so just this like chronic underlying, you know, like discomfort, and really tuning into when the body feels unsafe. And what was really nice, this one, what came alive for me was gentle wind was the kind of hexagram, right? So the I Ching kind of hexagram was a gentle wind. And that kind of then emerged a kind of meditation of like, to transmute that fear into love, to transmute that unease, using my breath as a gentle wind, and imagining, you know, just that state of relaxation and calmness, which then I merged with my SQ, which I know we're going to get to, but the hexagram and the
Feel free to go into it.
Yeah, on the SQ was a still lake, you know. So then it was like, okay, my heart, like, so the imagery of a still lake, my heart being a still lake, and then my breathing being a gentle wind. And that sort of became the mantra. So it was like, still heart, gentle wind, and then blank mind. Like keep the mind just an open canvas, an open sky, so that the body, so that the belly can then paint onto it. But yeah, if you want to explain the SQ.
Yeah. So just to reveal then, the SQ, that is from birth to age 7. So that's called the love point. And it is our physical development cycle, as this is our physical development cycle, this gene key governs the primary physiological rhythms and structural patterns that are the basis of our identity. So very deep, you know, most of this kind of takes place before we're really thinking, especially thinking of ourselves as separate from the world around us. So it really does take us back into being fully immersed again, and just kind of experiencing ourselves as the outside world. So anything about this love point that you want to bring up from your meditation or your contemplation?
Yeah. You know, I realized I kind of missed saying something really, really important about all this, because Richard Rudd really talks about how this Venus sequence, it's taking your relationships, it's taking your primary relationships, your intimate relationships, and using those relationships to grow and to expand and to become more conscious. And he distinguishes between a path of meditation versus a path of love. And they both have value. But the meditation is sort of like, okay, I'm going to go sit in front of a wall or in a cave. I'm going to kind of remove myself from the world to know myself. And that this pathway, and he notes how fucking difficult it is. It is. But this is the pathway of love, because it's taking your relationships and then it's like letting them work you. So it's incredibly participatory, and there's a deeper engagement with it. And something I want to note too that he highlights is that you actually don't need, like, it's great if your partner wants to participate in it, like holy couple, like that's amazing, but you don't need your partner to do it. That, like, it just takes one person going through this and working with it for the relationship to change. So I guess I really also want to name, maybe this does relate to that SQ, but that this is not like even though I did this 12 days kind of in isolation, so to speak, I did really just want to do more of that meditative piece. The call for this sequence is actually to really bring it into the world and really to apply it to your relationships and to commit, to, he encourages that a lot, like, that often we end the commitment before it's given us the opportunity. Like, the conflict is that midwife to consciousness. So I guess I really want to name that, because it's real work. It's like real hands-on, bringing it. Can you love unconditionally others? It's hard. So I think that's really important to name about this sequence in this practice. So yeah, the SQ for me, the spiritual quotient, that one was great. That one was bliss, vitality, and I think dissatisfaction. And this one was really getting into my really young, like looking at old pictures as a child, of just really recalling this radiant youthfulness and this joyousness, this buoyancy that I had as a young child. And that was really nice to kind of, and that's, like, so lots of, like I said, finger painting and dancing and really just sinking into this spirit who was so courageous, unafraid, and so emanating love. So the SQ for me was like, how do I emanate all this love out? Like, and what is that? What is the essence of that? And that's bliss. That's a vitality. And so really bringing that heart energy, was really deep heart energy for me, heart opening.
Yeah. That's actually one of the lines too, is that this is the pathway to opening your heart. This sequence, going through all of these periods in our past and reviewing, because then, it gets you back to that coming out into this world, like the courage that it takes to be a spirit incarnate on this world that's filled with, the chaos that is. It takes a lot of courage. So really going back to that place, the you could say ground zero, the initial battle zone, when you broke out of your mom's womb, or wherever, we should say for the IVF, yes, whatever environment it is that you were involved in prior to entering into this world. That transition, like becoming this new thing in this new world. Lots of courage to face that again.
Yeah. And what a beautiful thing, right? To like know that like, this is how I can like really emanate this out, It's like, and this is how I reveal that in others, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's really important to say, because that's how you bring it out in others. It's because we're getting to the core sphere. So this is like the core wound. And this is just that 9 months prior to birth. So when all your life's patterns, the physical, the emotional, and the mental, were imprinted in your DNA. So that's what this core sphere is reflecting on, is that internal world of not having been born yet. So what did you have from your reflections on this sphere?
Yeah, this is cool. Yeah, and this was like, he also talks about how this is your kind of part of the collective. Like, it's really bringing the collective elements. This is kind of what you hold for the collective. So mine was illumination, imagination, and
That's why I said, don't worry about memorizing any of them. For anybody else,
well, it's funny. It's like, actually, yes,
confusion.
You should know your shadow, which is really funny because that's also what it's at the end of the book. He says something so beautiful of own your shadow. It's like it's such a call to self-responsibility for your own patterns, taking ownership of your patterns, not asking others to do the work for you. And that's also to say not to ask for help when you need it. But so it's like taking the self-responsibility, knowing your shadows, working with that. And then what you do for others is you illuminate the gift for them. You don't focus on their shadows, you focus on their gifts. And I just thought that was a really beautiful invitation of being in relationship with others. I liked that a lot. But yeah, for me, gosh, that one, that one was really powerful because the sort of line for the illumination is enlightened poetry. And I love writing poetry. And I didn't know I liked writing poetry till maybe a year and a half ago. I had no idea, so it's cool. Like when those things kind of, you're such a stranger to yourself. You're such a stranger to yourself. And these sequences have, in life in general, just kind of reveals your mystery to you as you go along, if you listen really well and pay attention. So this one was really great because it helped me remember that the way to transform that shadow, the shadow is confusion. And again, going back into the simplicity, into the quintessence, going back into the silence from which everything arises. It was like, that was the invitation to the way of transmuting fear into love is through art. So taking that pain and making it artful, whether it's through ritual or through writing, and just really making your life a work of art, making your life an inspiration, and to be inspired by others. Yeah, so that one was that one was more practical for me in a way, because it was like, yeah, don't forget to use these tools of taking that pain and transmuting it into something that is beautiful. That's kind of like what the Gene Keys kind of, I think, really points to, is it's like the shadow is actually the material. It's like vultures or like garbage. You can actually take this and create, it's the material, it's the matter that actually then can get you to that elevated place. And so, yeah, and other things, to go back to the work as a psychologist, and some things I offer people, it's like how to work with these things. And, there's a couple ways, one is like, you can't bypass your pain. It's like, sometimes this was a huge sort of lesson for me in this time, was I am absolutely not going to work through this by thinking about it. I have to just let this, I could feel like so much energy in my solar plexus is in my heart. Like there's so much fear or just like dense waviness, like coursing through my body. And there was no way to overthink that or outthink that. And so I either just had to keep coming back to some kind of mantra, do not feed the monsters, don't feed the monsters. Or again, like still heart, gentle breath, clear mind. And you just gotta like, it felt like something in my body was cooking, like my body was cooking something, and it was cooking it out of me. So trusting in that process, that alchemy, it felt very alchemical. And knowing that my overthinking it wasn't gonna do anything for me. My body knows how to move this. My body knows how to work with this, trusting that. And so either, you got to sit with that pain and let it just burn itself out. Or you can elevate your thinking, and look at the light. Like, where's the light? Find the light, and then keep such a precise focus on that light. Do not look around,
Mm.
Or you use it to create, like you make art out of it. So it was really just kind of letting all whatever's working in me right now burn, and learning how to burn well, just learning how to burn softly and gently, and with trust, with deep, deep trust. That was another mantra, was I trust you, universe. I trust you, universe. I trust you, universe. I can do this, because there's just times sometimes it's like, feels like my body can't hold it all, but I trust you, universe. I can do this. So that was also a noticing, was like, I still feel so much pain coursing through my body, but I'm noticing that it's metabolizing faster, and it's not getting like less. The pain's actually getting bigger, but it cooks faster now. Great.
So nice. That was like bringing up for me the idea of sourdough starter.
Yeah.
And like you what you have to do is you take your starter and then you add some water and some flour after you've poured half of it off, and then you do it again, and every day you pour half of it off and add the water and the flour, and over time you get this dough that you can actually make bread with. But there's like that whole process first. And so that's one of the things about Gene Keys, is there's that whole 7-year deconditioning. And so there's no need to know it all right when you begin. There's no need to have everything figured out right when you begin. And there's no way to really logically work through this. It's not propositions. These are living relationships that you can develop with these words. The Gene Keys, all of those words hold a frequency when you speak them. So your body, the vibrations that you feel in your body, and those kinds of things too. So that's why, like Holly's saying, it takes so much longer to feel that processing, feel the alchemy. And when you're first confronted with Gene Keys, especially the way that we normally learn in this, this is a fact, learn it and memorize it and commit it to memory, and now you know it. And that's not how the Gene Keys work. It's a real feeling it, taking the word in, and then literally allowing the vibrations to happen in your body and allowing that processing to take place. So we have gone through the whole sequence, the Venus sequence. And now what I want to do is open the floor if there are any questions or reflections for this part, so that we can use the last bit of this session to go over the Venus retrograde and the Gene Keys that are in that. So thank you, Holly, for that insightful discussion. And yeah, like I said, I'm just going to open up the floor to any questions for anybody. Your Gene Keys for the Venus retrograde. So what we have here is that on the 19th of June, that's when Venus entered shadow. So it's not when she entered Gene Key 33, but when she entered shadow. So 33. And then on the 20th of June, that's when she moved into Gene Key 7. On the 27th of June, into Gene Key 4. And then on the 7th of July, into Gene Key 29. And then we all remember the day Venus retrograded, because it's the day, actually, that the Barbie movie came out. Technically the 21st of July, but isn't that so interesting that the Barbie movie came out as Venus retrograded, or station retrograde. So then back into Gene Key 4 on the 6th of August. And we just moved back into, or she just moved back into Gene Key 7 or Gate 7. I'm going to use them interchangeably. For the 16th of August, she will re-enter Gene Key 33 on the 28th of August, and then station direct in that Gene Key 33. Stays there quite like a week, and then moves back into 7 on the 11th of September. We'll move back into 4 on the 24th of September, and then back into the 29, Gene Key 29 on the 2nd of October, leaves shadow the 7th of October. So that's what we're looking at. As you know already, this is a great time to perhaps contemplate your Venus sequence. And yeah, reaching out, of course, in our chats and things like that, if you're a member, is awesome because we're kind of going through the transits there as well. So yeah, we've been having a lively discussion about that. And so now what I'd like to do is, Holly, if there's anything about Venus retrograde that you've been sensing into, anything from your perspective, because what we're presenting here is our community members and people that are engaging with our community. So not everybody that's going to be speaking in our speaker series is an astrologer or a human design expert or a gene keys person, and our audience members might not be as well. So from your perspective, all the things that you have in your skill set, your toolkit, and your experiences, what's coming up for you, Venus retrograde?
It's amazing. I love that. And I wanted to sort of highlight, right, like 33 was revelation, mindfulness. It's a shadow of that one. Revelation, mindfulness, and forgetting. And then, right, 29.
I have that one too.
29 is devotion, commitment, half-heartedness. And then 7 is virtue, guidance. And isn't it great how I forget all the shadows, even though it's kind of
well, that's why also I've provided them in the picture so that if anybody just like screenshots that, you can just kind of follow it along. And then the homework, actually, you're cheating. You're giving them the answers to their homework questions.
Oh, sorry.
The homework is for everyone to go through.
I like to help people cheat, actually.
So what Holly's been revealing is the separate frequencies of these gene keys. And that's kind of the idea that I was kind of coming up with is, contemplating these gene keys as we're going through the transit. So that's the dates provided, or looking back on your journals. Because like we said, this logical mind of ours can help us to time travel. And so we can go in the future or go in the past. And if there's anything that you want to review from those dates that were provided, that's, the intention here is for you to go in and get into those frequencies and contemplate like Holly did.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was, again, synchronicity is so beautiful when you're paying attention, and there's so much magic everywhere all the time. We did that Great Rite ritual, the Beltane ritual, and the word, and from that a word emerged, and for me it was devotion. That was the word. And then we come into summer solstice, and then it's a deeper contemplation of that word devotion for me. So it was just really interesting. Venus in retrograde, there's obviously stations where she's in this place of devotion. So that word, I've been sitting with this word for a few months in commitment and what that means. And that's, again, pathway of love. So how is this showing up in my immediate relationships? What does it mean to fully commit? What does it mean to be devoted to somebody? There's a deep element of unconditional love in that. Mm-hmm. The other thing that has been so forward in my life has been that the forgiveness. I've been really sitting with that. That's one of the sacred seals. I believe it's the 4th or 5th sacred seal in Richard Rudd's book. And forgiveness, there's a line in there, forgiveness is freedom, and what it means to actually understand somebody. Because what that does is it causes me to see you not as separate, right? That you are actually me in a different form, in a different time. Like, we're sharing the same space, but you are actually me. You are me. So when I can keep that in the front of my action or in my behavior, in my heart, it becomes so much easier to maneuver in the world, because if you're me, then I want to care for you. I want to tend to you. I want to love you the way that I want to be loved. And there's that cliche, treat people the way you want to be treated, but to actually know that, to have that coursing through your body, through your bones, through blood is a whole different matter. And it just takes an incredible amount of precision and practice, I think, to keep that alive. And that, baked within trust is forgiveness. There's a beautiful line he says where it's like an unbreakable trust, because the forgiveness is already in that trust. Every moment you are forgiven. And but to actually live that is not super easy. But that's an aspiration, you know. It might be idealistic and quixotic, which I can be, but I'd much rather shoot for that unconditional love, that unrelenting forgiveness and understanding, than to not shoot for it, you know. So
yeah,
I've it's been a tough Venus retrograde. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really ready for her to turn around. But it's the work. I mean, this is where the work happens. The work happens in that it happens in the shadow, you know. So it happens in hibernation. There's so much work that happens in the season of hibernation, the unseen. So that's what I've been feeling into.
Nice. Beautiful. And so kind of like a culminating message that I got from listening to this is that idea of returning non-love with love, and that being what unconditional love is. So that's really difficult. So thank you for doing the work on your land and in your practice and internally, because if each of us is doing the internal work, then it's a world of wonderful people. So let's make it happen. All right, everybody. Let's march. Okay. We appreciate you so much for sticking around to the end, and we hope that you enjoy this session. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you in some of our future sessions.